Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to give you a warning. The revenge described in the Oresteia gets a little dark, but I promise you're not going to want to miss it. Now, so far on this channel, we've covered 3 revenge stories. Edmond Dantes, who waited 13 years and never lost his composure. Medea, who burned everything down, including herself. And Amy Dune, who never raised her voice and destroyed her husband completely. Each of those stories had a beginning, a moment where one person wronged another, a clear line between the person who started it and the person who responded. Today, that line doesn't exist. Today, every single person in the story is both the victim and the killer. Every act of revenge is simultaneously justified and unforgivable. And the question this story asks, a question that was asked for the first time in human history in 458 BC and has never been fully answered since, is: can justice truly exist when everyone has blood on their hands? This is the Oresteia, written by Aeschylus, the oldest revenge trilogy in Western literature, and the story that invented something the entire world still uses today. But we'll get to that later. Before we go anywhere, you need to understand the family at the center of this story, the House of Atreus. This family's been cursed for generations before our story even begins. There's a history of infanticide, cannibalism, and betrayal going back further than anyone in the story can remember. Violence runs through the bloodline the way water runs through a river, not because anyone chose it, but because it's always been there. By the time we arrive, the curse has produced 2 children. The first is Agamemnon, king of Mycenae. He's the commander of the Greek forces, and he's the most powerful man in the known world. And this is the man who will make one decision that sets everything that follows into motion. The second is his wife Clytemnestra, a queen of extraordinary intelligence and political capability. A woman who's been running a kingdom alone for 10 years while her husband fought a war. And a woman who's been waiting, patiently, quietly, completely. They have 3 children together: Iphigenia, Electra, and Orestes. Now let's go over those names one more time. Agamemnon the king, Clytemnestra his wife, the 3 children, Iphigenia, Electra, and Orestes. Do your best to remember all 5 of these names, because every single one of them matters before this story's finished. Now picture this. The Greek fleet's assembled at Aulis. They have 10,000 ships. It's the greatest military force ever gathered in the ancient world, all of them waiting to sail to Troy to retrieve Helen. But there's one problem. There's no wind. The goddess Artemis has stilled the air. The fleet can't move. Days pass, then weeks. The army begins to deteriorate. Agamemnon consults the prophet Calchas and receives an answer that'll haunt this family for 3 generations. The winds will come, but Agamemnon must sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia first. Please, take a moment and observe that. The most powerful man in the world, a father, is told that his ambition has a price. And this price is his child. And Agamemnon pays it. He sends word to Clytemnestra that Iphigenia is to be married to Achilles, the greatest warrior of the age. Clytemnestra brings her daughter to Aulis for the wedding. But there is no wedding. Iphigenia is led to the altar and killed. Now, the winds come, the fleet sails, and Agamemnon goes to war. And Clytemnestra goes home. She goes home to an empty palace, to 2 surviving children, to a throne she'll hold alone for 10 years. And she begins to wait, not to heal, but to plan. Here's what makes Clytemnestra different from every other revenge figure we've discussed on Dark Margins. She doesn't act in grief, and she doesn't act in rage. But she waits 10 years. 10 years of ruling a kingdom, 10 years of raising 2 children without their father, 10 years of watching the empty road that leads home from Troy. And when Agamemnon finally returns, victorious, celebrated, bringing a Trojan princess as his concubine, Clytemnestra is ready. She welcomes him home with everything a returning king could want. Warm words, a prepared bath, the performance of a devoted wife who's missed her husband for a decade. Agamemnon steps into the bath, and Clytemnestra kills him. She wraps him in a net so he can't fight back and strikes him 3 times. Once for the marriage he corrupted, once for the concubine he brought into their home, and once for Iphigenia. And the best part is, she doesn't hide it. She doesn't even flee. She stands over the body of the king of Mycenae and tells the chorus, tells the world exactly what she did and why. I struck him down. I won't deny it. She's not a woman in crisis. She's a woman who kept a promise she made to herself 10 years ago, standing over the body of her dead daughter. Now, ask yourself the question the story always forces. Was she wrong? That was the first generation. That was the parents. Now, let's get into the second generation. The son Orestes has grown up knowing what his mother did. He was sent away before it happened. He was too young, too vulnerable, and unable to stop it. He grew up in exile, carrying 2 things simultaneously: love for his mother and the knowledge that Greek law, divine law, demands he avenge his father. Now, I always say this in every episode, but that's because I want it to sink in. Think about what this does to a person. The person you are commanded to kill is the person who raised you, who loved you. The person you're avenging is the father you barely knew and the father that killed your sister. But the god Apollo himself appears to Orestes and makes the obligation explicit. Avenge your father, or be cursed forever. There's no version of this story where Orestes wins. If he does nothing, he's cursed by the gods for failing. But if he acts, he commits matricide. He kills his own mother. And the one crime in Greek understanding is that the Furies, ancient spirits of vengeance older than the gods themselves, cannot ignore or forgive the killing of a mother. But Orestes makes his choice. He returns to Mycenae with his friend Pylades. He then kills his mother's lover Aegisthus, and he stands in front of Clytemnestra, his own mother, the woman who watched her own daughter die and waited 10 years to respond, and then he kills her. And the moment she falls, the Furies come for him. They surround him, they drive him toward madness, they pursue him across the known world because what he's done is beyond the reach of any justification any mortal or god can offer. He killed his mother. There's no framework in existence that makes that acceptable. And now we get into the third generation, and it's here where Aeschylus does something that no writer had done ever before him. It was something so revolutionary that we still use it today, and it's been 2,500 years. He invents the jury trial. Not literally, but in literature for the first time in Western writing, the cycle of personal vengeance is interrupted by something new. The courts. The goddess Athena assembles the first jury in literary history, 12 Athenian citizens, to hear the case of Orestes. Apollo argues for the defense. The Furies argue for the prosecution. The arguments made in that courtroom are extraordinary. Apollo argues that a father's murder is greater than a mother's murderer because the father is the true parent. The mother merely carries the child. By this logic, Orestes' obligation to avenge Agamemnon outweighs the crime of killing Clytemnestra. The Furies argue that blood is blood, that the bond between mother and child is the oldest and most sacred bond in existence, that no obligation, divine or mortal, can justify what Orestes did. And after hearing the case for both sides, the jury votes. 6 for conviction, 6 for acquittal. A tie. Athena casts the deciding vote for acquittal, and in doing so, she declares something that changes everything. When justice cannot be determined, when both sides have equal claim to righteousness, mercy must be the tiebreaker. The Furies, who have existed since before civilization, who have pursued vengeance without mercy since the beginning of time, are transformed. Athena doesn't destroy them, she gives them a new purpose. They become the Eumenides, the kindly ones, protectors of Athens rather than engines of retribution. Thus, the cycle ends. Not because anyone won, but because someone decided it had to. So here's the question that Oresteia has been building toward since the first ship left for Troy. Can justice truly exist when everyone is both victim and killer? Now let's take a moment and go back through what we know. Agamemnon killed his daughter. He's guilty. He's also a man trapped by divine command and military obligation in a world where those things weren't optional. He's guilty, and he had no good choice. Clytemnestra, she killed her husband. She's guilty. She's also a mother who watched her child die at the husband's hand and received no justice, no acknowledgement, no apology for 10 years. She's guilty, but she was never wrong to be furious. Orestes killed his mother. He's also guilty. But on top of that, he was commanded by a god, trapped by a law he didn't make, facing an obligation he never chose. He's guilty, and he had no good choice either. Every person in this chain is a killer, and every person in this chain was wronged first. And this is what Aeschylus is telling us, something that behavioral psychology and moral philosophy have been circling ever since. Justice cannot exist inside a cycle. Inside a cycle, there's only cause and effect, action and reaction, wound and response. The cycle doesn't care about right and wrong, it only cares about continuation. But what breaks that cycle in the Oresteia is not a more powerful revenge, it's not a more justified killing, it's not even a verdict. It's the decision to stop. Athena doesn't determine who was right. She can't, because everyone was right and everyone was wrong simultaneously. What she determines is that the cycle itself is the enemy, that as long as a person's vengeance is the mechanism of justice, there is no justice. There's only the next killing waiting to happen. Think about what that means in the context of everything Dark Margins has covered. Edmond Dantes stopped his revenge cycle. He felt doubt, which meant his humanity survived. Medea didn't stop this revenge cycle, and she had no doubt. She utterly destroyed the version of herself that had something worth protecting. And Amy Dune couldn't stop. She already had a plan for whatever came next. In the Oresteia, written 5 centuries before Christ, 2,500 years before any of us were born, already knew all of this. He already knew that the only way out of a revenge cycle is a decision made from outside it. Already, he knew that mercy, not victory, is what justice actually requires. The world's first jury trial wasn't just a legal innovation. It was a statement about what human beings are capable of when they choose to be better than their wounds. The question is whether we've learned anything since. The Oresteia is 3 plays. Agamemnon, the libation bearers, and the Eumenides. All three are in public domain, completely free, and together they take about 3.5 hours to read. And trust me, you're going to want to read all three in order. The experience of watching the cycle build and then finally break is unlike anything else in literature. I'll do my best to link them in the description. And now for the next time we meet together, we're going to stay in the ancient world, but trust me, we go somewhere darker. It's a revenge so total, so generational, so deliberately engineered that it makes everything we've discussed so far look restrained. We're going to talk about what happens when one of the Greek gods decides to destroy a family. Trust me, subscribe, because this one has no jury, it has no mercy, and it has no survivors. You're not going to want to miss it. I'm Bobby Garrison, and this is Dark Margins. I'll see you in the next chapter.